So I'm going to hand over to Mark Shelbourn now, who's going to look at the challenges for education. So there's a slight difference in the talks we're going to get now. Mark, Mary and Donal is going to do the shift in the emphasis, so maybe the discussion will change also a little bit. So I'm going to hand over to Mark. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Noel. Still morning, everybody. As Noel quite rightly said, I'm going to change the focus of the discussion a little bit in terms of, I'm not going to mention BIM, I'm not going to talk about any technology, and we're going to talk about some of the work we've been doing with the Centre for Digital Built Britain in the UK, which I'll talk about in a moment. But first of all, thank you to Noel and Lloyd for inviting me to come over. I really appreciate that, and hopefully in the next 15-20 minutes we're going to get you thinking a little bit more about the challenges of how we actually educate not just people in universities but industry as well around the challenges of using this BIM stuff, if you like. So, as most of the presentations have gone before, I did a little bit of Googling about what a smart city was. I think I knew what a smart city was, and I did some Googling of what it was. And this kind of like picture on the screen really resonated with me what it was. It's about joining all these things together. And we're just having a small discussion in the back there during the coffee break about what that actually means in terms of ownership of information and all kinds of stuff. But if we really are going to work in this smart way, we've been doing a lot of research about that it's the actual people that you need to convince, not the technology itself being able to work. The technology will do whatever you want it to do, essentially now. It's pretty sophisticated, as some of the videos that Paul showed. They're quite powerful in terms of displaying information. What we're looking at now is people's motivations, how you actually perhaps change the process in some ways that enable these smart cities to operate. So back in 2005, 2006, we started doing some work around collaboration and collaborative working. And we found out that in terms of effort you put into one of these collaborative BIM projects, or whatever you want to call them, it's, 20% of it is about technology. The other 40% is around people, and the other 40% is around process. So some of the things that Tammy was showing in terms of the pyramid we can resonate with. But what we're really focused on now in the shift towards the research at Salford, particularly with Jason Underwood and myself, is around the people aspect. How do we convince people in the room that BIM or smart cities or whatever it is a good idea? And that's what I want to focus on today and talk to you a little bit about that. So this was my kind of thinking around what smart cities was, and I guess we're concentrated on the smart buildings thing, being in the built environment, but there's also a lot of recognition that there's a lot of things happening on the outside of that. And if you look at what the Digital Built Britain is, and I'll give you a bit of a history lesson in a moment about what Digital Built Britain is. If you do any kind of research around BIM, you'll see this triangular wedge. Paul showed it on one of his slides. And it all dates back to, in 2011, the UK government published a white paper that said they didn't say they needed BIM, we needed 3D collaborative information on any publicly procured project. And people interpreted that as they want BIM. So the whole BIM train happened in the UK from 2011 onwards. And by 2016, all government publicly procured projects have to have this 3D collaborative information aspect to it. And that's happened now, and it's been implemented with to certain degrees of success in some projects. Some people are still lagging behind. But then the progression after that is what people would term in level 3 BIM, and Lloyd alluded to that on one of his slides earlier on. And rather than the UK calling it level 3 BIM, they've now termed it Digital Built Britain. Okay, so Digital Built Britain is all around bringing some of the technologies that we've been seeing this morning together to enable more productive procurement of public buildings in the UK. So some of the benefits that Tammy was talking about in her presentation about cost savings, the UK government aren't publishing how much money they're actually saving. What they're saying is they can now build 8 hospitals for the price of 5 in using the new collaborative BIM processes and things like that. So they produced a document called Digital Built Britain. And to enable Digital Built Britain to happen, they've set up a research centre that's run at the University of Cambridge in the UK. It's been given around £74 million to create the research agenda and help implement this Digital Built Britain. And essentially it's all about digital twins. So So what's in the computer is actually on the site and all that kind of stuff. And this diagram here basically represents what Digital Bulk Britain means for the UK construction industry. So similar kind of thing, we're still designing things, we're still building things, we're still operating things, but we're trying to integrate that into perhaps a larger society. So part of the Digital Bulk Britain strategy, a number of research projects were given back in June of last year, June 2018. And Salford won a project working with the University of Liverpool, looking at education and upskilling the industry in terms of what needs to happen for Digital Bulk Britain to happen, if you like. So when people start talking about smart cities, it immediately resonates that is what Digital Bulk Britain is. It's about bringing all those things together. And we were charged with looking at what the educational challenges and what are the industry upskilling challenges. And what I want to do today is talk to you a little bit about some of the educational challenges, if you like. Reports available online. If you look at the Pedagogy and Upskilling Network paper, you should find it. I should have put a link in, but I haven't in my slides. So that's what Digital Bulk Britain is. If you look at any of their publications, these are the challenges. Apologies for the poor quality of the slide. I couldn't find a picture, but I couldn't find any better from the report. But these are the challenges that the Centre for Digital Bulk Britain is now facing. And probably most of those things we've discussed this morning into lesser or more detailed degree. And one of the key things for us was around education and training. You know, we are an academic institution. The University of Salford has a reputation for excellent research in the built environment, doing these kind of activities for many years now. But we've moved more towards the education rather than the technology side. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But most of the things that we've talked about today, and policy, research change, and all those kind of things are happening as part of this Digital Bulk Britain. So, these are the challenges for Digital Bulk Britain. Propose the capabilities needed for the UK to deliver and benefit from the Digital Bulk Britain society, and deliver enabling research to enable that to happen. So we've been setting the research agenda over the last 6 months. And what I want to share with you is some of those key research questions in the context of education and upskilling, but I think there may be resonance when we start talking about the roundtable discussions this afternoon. So we have described the state of the art, we think, and some of the leading practice today in terms of education and upskilling in the industry. And we've tried to build a community of people, much like you've done today in terms of getting people together for this workshop. We built a community of people in terms around people interested in education in the UK. And we're trying to now set off some pilot projects to get that to happen. So this is our key research question. How do we create and support a digitally enabled, agile, competent and ultimately productive workforce? So again, we're looking at individuals. How do we make the individual better? In the context of, if we can make the individual more productive, then essentially they're going to be more productive when they're working on projects and all the rest of it. So this was our key research question. We didn't quite get there, I don't think, in terms of how we actually do it. We've formulated a plan, and I'm going to try and share some of that plan with you. Unfortunately, our acronym is PUN, which was somewhat amusing when we figured out that actually pedagogy and upskilling abbreviates to the word PUN, which is interesting when we started doing some of the workshops. But yeah, that's where we are. So some of the key findings that we came up with as part of the project is that when people are successful in projects, or the project is deemed a success, they're more characterised about people making the right decisions at the right time with the right information. But you can then think about that in the context of a smart city. You know, if we are trying to improve society, and we're trying to improve the way that people interact with buildings and spaces and all those kind of things, they need to do that with the right kind of information. How we actually display that information for them, you know, there's many technologies, phones and all the rest of it. But, you know, if we are going to create these successful areas or spaces, we looked at construction projects. But, you know, you can go the same principles and come for the same for smart cities and all the rest of it. And to enable productive people, there's this mediation between a competence, supply and demand. So when we started doing our research, we were trying to move away from construction having roles. So you're no longer a QS, you're no longer a construction manager, you're no longer an architect. Construction projects are all, we're proposing that construction projects in a digital built Britain society are based around activities. And those activities can be undertaken by individuals, but they may not be a built environment individual. Because building information models are so complicated with metadata and all the rest of it, and the associated objects with them and how much information they contain, we need to engage in computer scientists, data analytics, information scientists to help with making these projects successful. So we're trying to move away from this role in construction. We're moving more towards activities and the skills and the competencies needed for individuals to undertake those activities is where we're proposing to go. So we're looking at this competence approach. Okay, so if you look at any kind of definition of competence, this one comes from Zhao in 2015. It's not just about the knowledge and the skills, but it's about how you apply them to both dimension, to a combination of all the dimensions, such as knowledge, skills, abilities, experience, behaviours, and all the rest of it. Okay? So we're looking, very philosophically around how you actually define what these individuals need to be, in terms of what their competencies are needed and all the rest of it. We have behaviours there. I'm part of a group in the UK that's called Behaviours for Collaboration. And we've been working now for the past 6 or 7 years to try and get the people agenda as part of this strategy, if you like. So we've looked at what makes an individual collaborate with each other, and we've called those collaborative behaviours. So we've been working on that as alongside some of the work we're doing with the Centre for Digital Built Britain. So as I said before, the activities are the fundamental building blocks of work that we do, whether it's the digital twin on the site or whether it's a digital twin in the computer. So a lot of the UK strategy now, government strategy, is around describing this digital twin environment. And that's all part of the digital built agenda. And as I said before, the construction projects or built environment projects are really a collection of those activities that need to happen. So we have the RIPA plan of work, we have all those things in terms of 0 to 7 and all the rest of it, but are they really truly the activities that now need to happen in terms of the way the construction project works in this digital society? And then if you extrapolate that from an individual building to the, I've seen precinct information model, or I was talking about city information model, I've seen precinct information model being used as well. But if you take, all right, that collection of activities for an individual project and then extrapolate that to a precinct or a city, then those activities probably haven't been defined as far as I can see. So that's where we are. Moving towards competency, bit of background on that. We need to define what a competency is. And again, Zhao in 2017, we're taking a lot of what's the right word? I'm going to say influence, if you like, from his work. But we're looking at the productivity of individual peoples and then the collective in those activities on projects. So there's a competency supply and demand. And what some of the research we're advocating is, how do you move from one competency to another? There's different levels, probably with different activities. As you move up the chain in terms of management, if you like, those competencies will probably change as well. But it requires a fundamental change the way professional accrediting bodies work, the RIBA, the RICS, CIOB, and all those people still talk about roles, whereas we're advocating it's all about activities and grouping those activities together, and the right person doing that. As I said before, our project was not just about education. A lot of it focused on upskilling the industry. So we're all moving along this journey of digital built Britain in the UK and using BIM technologies to run projects and all the rest of it. But how do we make sure that those people who are already working in the industry are being upskilled to enable that to happen? We predict that certain roles will disappear. and people that have been working in the industry for 20, 30 years perhaps need to be reskilled. How do we go about doing that? So that's one of the key questions we ask ourselves as well. Yep. So any worker who better use their skills are more likely to have greater job satisfaction. So if we're more happy with our work, generally we're more productive. So I think Lloyd talked about Industry 4 earlier on. Productivity is a key word of Digital World Britain. How can we be more productive in the things we do? At the project level, city level, certainly at the individual level. So what do we need to do? So I think that the same principles, I have used BIM in my presentation, sorry. I forgot I put this in. I put this in last night. So the same principles of smart cities using BIM is the enabler. Okay, so we've seen excellent examples in presentations previously about the technology being used to visualise what we need to do. So the principles around how you use those technologies to do things, I think, are purely applicable for an individual project as they are for the smart city. So the key research questions: how do we design, manage, implement a collaborative competence management? That's what we're proposing. Approach that enables, facilitates competencies and currency in the labour market. So as I say, we're moving away from this role idea to words of competency. And from my perspective, being in academia, how do we then change curriculum with the nuances of working in a university environment that enable us to create these competent, collaborative people? And again, it's about the individuals, not the organisations of the projects. The organisations to a certain degree, but certainly we've been looking at the individual level. So moving forward, and I'm finishing now, we started with this, which is what I would see as a definition of a smart city. We then looked at the Centre for Digital World Britain approach to enabling a better society, using all the technologies available in the BIM world. And I think we're, certainly in the UK, we're moving away from the term BIM now. If you're working on a construction project, it's called a project information model, as I said before. And then when you hand over that project information model, it then becomes an asset information model for the clients or the owners to then use that information contained in it to run their facilities better, being more productive. So I want to leave you with, to enable this to happen, we need to get the right people collaborating together to get the job done.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, very interesting around competence.
Yes.
Okay, part of the Real Smart City project,
yes.
one aspect is we're looking at notions of capacitation.
Okay.
Okay. Where maybe we can develop that discussion a bit later.
Yeah.
And also, I think the idea of moving away from roles to activities is also very intriguing.
Work and labour.
Work and labour.
Yeah.
So we're making a distinction between labour as something which can be maybe automised,
Yes.
as opposed to work, which is something which is much more open.
Yeah.
From the French word ouvre.
Yeah.
So we're making a distinction between labour and work, and within that, the question of capacitation, which is slightly different to competency, comes up. But I think that's a much bigger discussion that we can have now.
Definitely.
Okay.
Moving some of those activities, prefabricating in the factory setting and all those kind of things is more safer, if you like, and then you're almost assembling things rather than constructing.
Yeah, and also about one of the aspects is the impact on employment.
Yeah.
So what within the construction sector, I think it's really interesting to work out what those impacts are.
Yes.
As you say, it's like, as we're at a university setting here, that's part of our role, is how we relate to society in terms of economic, political and social agencies.
So as these things change, you've got a guy that's been a site manager for 30 years, and then all of a sudden the activities of that particular job, if you like, change. How do we then change that person? Do they become redundant, or do we try and reskill them and do something? These are big challenges.
I think I'm just conscious we're a bit tight time, but that's something that we'll come back to later.
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
great. Thanks very much. Okay. Now, Mary from Dublin City Council is going to give us